Hello, my crafty friends. Well, today I have a fun little technique to share with you. I'm going to show you how to partially die cut your cards. And I have two different ways you can use this technique in your card making. Hi, it's Lynn Dunn from Stamptastic Designs. Thanks so much for joining me today. In this episode of Stamptastic TV, I have two different card ideas I want to share with you that feature the partial die cutting technique. Now, this particular technique really just involves partially cutting through your cardstock to create a fun little element on your card. And the cool thing about this technique is that you actually end up with a very simple fun fold card as well. Now, the cards in this video feature the Sophisticated Sled Bundle from Stampin Up. So this is one of the brand new online exclusive. So you will only find this bundle in the online store. And I have linked to that in the description below this video. So this particular bundle has a stamp set and of course a coordinating die set. However, keep in mind that you can use any die cut shape to do this technique. Okay, so first let's talk about this partial die cutting technique. You can really use any card base, any cardstock that you want to for this technique. For these cards, I actually am using a 4 1/4 by 11 inch piece of white cardstock, and I just scored it in the middle at 5 1/2 inches to create just a standard card base. And so what I want to do with this card base is I want to do some partial die cutting down here so that I can create a fun fold style card. So let me show you how to do this partial die cutting. Okay, so basically what I'm going to do is I'm just taking my cardstock, my 4 1/4 by 11 inch piece, I'm opening it completely up, and I'm just laying the edge of it towards the inside of this embossing machine. And then I'm going to take this die cut shape and just lay it on the bottom, and then I'm just going to put my plate over the top. And so we're going to run this through the embossing machine, but not all the way. So we're going to run it up to about here, and then we're going to stop. And so basically what that does is it partially cuts. It doesn't cut the entire wreath out, as you can see, it just gives me a partial cut. So now we are ready to just kind of finish this off and create an edge for the card. All right, so this is our finished product. So you can see I only have this partially die cut. So once this part of the die went through the embossing machine, I cranked it back. In other words, I didn't send it all the way through, I brought it back so that I just had this partial die cut shape here. So now what we want to do is we want to use our paper trimmer just to kind of trim this up a little bit. So I want to create kind of like a little fun fold card. So I'm just going to make a cut. I'm going to line up this edge here in my paper trimmer, and I'm just going to cut up to this section right here. So I'm just kind of cutting up to where it die cut. And I'm going to do the same thing from the top down, just kind of cut down. All right, so now we can just take this piece off, and then we have our die cut shape right on the front of our card. Okay, so once you have the partial die cutting completed in your card and you've trimmed off the excess, you're ready to create a card. And there's two different ways that I used this particular die in my card making, and you can do the same. So the first way that I used my partial die cutting is simply to just decorate it as is. So I partially cut a wreath into my card front. So this is kind of the handle to open up the card. I opted to just stamp and die cut another wreath to put right over the top of this, simply because I was coloring the wreath with some stamping blends, so those tend to bleed through, and I didn't want it to bleed through to the back of the card. So I just opted to, create another wreath and just add it to the top, but you don't have to. You can actually just stamp the wreath right in this spot and color it as is. All right, and the second way that you can use this partial die cutting technique is simply to adhere something else to that partially die cut sections. And so I'm going to show you how I put this together, because this one is probably one of my favorite cards, and I just thought it turned out so cool. So what you're going to do, there's some die cut pieces in the Sophisticated Sled Bundle. So you're going to die cut out the base of the sled. I just used some early espresso cardstock. And then for the sled itself, I die cut the sled pieces. I cut it out twice so that I had a front and a back. And so what I'm going to do is basically just add some glue down the side here. So we'll just add a little bit down the side to get the first couple of pieces on. And we'll add a little bit here too, I guess. So we'll adhere this. And then we'll add this other piece up at the top. So I'm just going to add a little bit of glue up there. So this is the other piece that's going to go up here. And then once you get those adhered, you can just flip it over and you can add the other pieces on this side. So I'm just going to add some glue here. So I'm just basically gluing, you know, a front and back. So when you open up the card, you will be able to see just a finished sled on both sides. So I just kind of thought that was just a neat way to kind of play around with these dies. All right, and then I'll add this piece up at the top here. All right. So now we have the front and the back of our sled. They both look identical. All right, so I'm going to actually show you how I adhered this. It's very simple, but I need to add a piece first. So I'm just adding a 3 1/4 by 4 inch piece of embossed white cardstock. And that's what I put on the left side of this fun fold card here that we created. So the reason I'm adding this piece first is when I put this wreath over the top, it does overlap a little bit. So I am going to go ahead and add some glue to this wreath. And then we'll just add it to the little section that we partially die cut. All right, so that's our wreath. That's what it looks like on the back and on the front. And so now what I did after I put that sled together, I just simply looped this top part over a little bit and kind of lined up where I wanted my wreath and where I wanted the sled. So I wanted the sled to be somewhat centered. So I think we're going to go right about there. And so basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some glue to my wreath. Add a little bit of glue here. And then we'll add our sled. So we'll push that down on there. And you get a really fun fold card. I mean, how fun is that? You got the sled on the back and the wreath on the front. And then I just added, you know, this little bow and a little greeting, and that was really all I did to this card. I think that this whole section of the card is just really makes the card a lot of fun. So you can do this with any die cut shape. If you have other die cut shapes that layer together besides, you know, like a sled and this wreath, you could certainly, you know, use your partially die cut section to add just another die cut element behind it. So it creates a really fun card. Okay, so there you go. Now you have 2 different ways that you can use the partial die cutting technique in your card making. And if you enjoyed these card ideas, feel free to download the printable tutorial. You can find the link in the description below this video. Thanks so much for joining me today. If you enjoyed this video, please let me know by liking it and sharing it with your friends. And leave me a comment below to let me know what you enjoyed most about the video and the card shared here today. Have a fun and creative day, my friends. Take care.